The Data Possible podcast is brought to you by Discovery Data. For more information about Discovery Data, please visit discoverydata.com.
Welcome to the Data Possible podcast, brought to you by Discovery Data. The Data Possible podcast examines how data fuels your sales, marketing, and recruiting teams to achieve success. Our goal is to provide you with tools, techniques, and best practices to help you close more deals, find new opportunities, and recruit better people and partners. Now, on to the show.
Welcome to the Data Possible podcast, presented by Discovery Data. This is your host, Doug Heikkinen. Today, we welcome Ned Dane, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Aidentified. Aidentified identifies prospects at the moment when they are most likely to buy. Isn't technology cool? We can't wait to get into this one. Welcome, Ned.
Hey, Doug. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Prior to starting Aidentified, you had been in the financial services industry for 30 years. What's your background and what was the inspiration behind leaving the industry in such really interesting spots to start Aidentified?
Sure. So thank you. I had an amazing, I would say, traditional career in financial services. And maybe I'll just give you a little quick background on that. So I got my start back in the early 90s at Putnam Investments. Putnam was an incredible place to learn a lot about how to work with financial advisors, learn about capital markets and all that. I had a really terrific foundation there. I worked both in retail distribution and then later in the 401k business. And then I moved from the Boston area down to New York and took a job at AXA Equitable. And over time in my career at AXA Equitable, I was actually the president of their broker-dealer. While I was there, I learned the insurance secret handshake and learned a lot about insurance distribution. But I also had the good fortune of being involved in some merger transactions as well. We purchased Mutual of New York along the way. And then I also had the privilege of working on a major outsourcing and partnership with LPL. So got a really, really good foundation in leading businesses there. I then went on to Merrill Lynch and had a great career at Merrill for a number of years, working in both product and then sales leadership for them. And the last thing that I did was got a lot of exposure to the private bank within what was then called PBIG, which is now the private bank group at Merrill Lynch. And worked a lot with wealthy families and learned a lot about the changing needs of the rising generation in wealthy families. And then my last traditional stop was at Oppenheimer Funds. And I built a business there that was called the Private Client Group. And I led a team that served intermediaries that worked with ultra high net worth families. So these were like family offices and private banks and trust companies. So a lot of great things along my career, but there was one thing that I've done from the very beginning, and that has been partner with very successful financial advisors and help bring new ideas and solutions to them. So sorry for the long background, but that's 30 years of time in financial services. A couple years ago in 2018, when Oppenheimer Funds was acquired by Invesco, that was an opportunity for me to kind of step back and reflect. And one of the things that I thought about at that time was the value of data. And we were starting to see an evolution in the mutual fund business around data. We were starting to see that we were able to get more insight from the wirehouses and whatnot about where business was being conducted. We were bringing in data scientists and data analysts into asset management firms at that time, and really starting to really better understand what our distribution world looked like. And so the thought of data was in my head. And life is always a funny thing, along the way, I ran into an old friend, Tom Ailey, who's one of the co-founders of Aidentified, and he and his twin brother Dar and I all went to college together way back in the 80s. Tom and Dar had successfully built a couple of amazing data companies and along the way, and they were just starting up the concept of Aidentified, and it was just one of those right place, right time. I was thinking really critically about where data was going to play in the future of financial services, and here they came right to me with an idea that was still an idea at that point, but we took that idea and we built something quite remarkable. So, yeah, so that's the long version of my background and what brings me here. There's one other element, though, Doug, I'd like to talk about. Kind of along the way in my career, one of the things that I've always thought a lot about is the power of building diverse teams, and I've prided myself on that throughout my career. And when my role was moving on at part of the Oppenheimer and Invesco transition, I sort of looked back and said, I'm not the kind of person that right now is what we need in this industry, and there's other opportunities for other people. And so I felt like it was sort of my time to step aside. I had the good fortune of a little bit of liquidity to make that an easier decision. But I was, on the one hand, magnetically attracted to Identified, and on the other hand, I was really trying to, give leadership roles to other people.
At the top, I said identifies prospect at the moment when they're most likely to buy. Is that in a nutshell? And tell me more about that.
Yeah. So thank you. We serve a lot of different clients. Our most important clients are in financial services. That's what we built this technology for. But we also do serve other industries as well. We have a lot of colleges and universities that use our technology to help keep close watch of their alumni base and parents of their present students and those kinds of things. We work with luxury brands and we work with residential real estate. But what we do at Identified is really quite interesting and unique. So the first thing that we are as a company is we're a huge database. And so we purchase data from about 14 different data providers. And then we use some proprietary data science to take all of those data elements, some of which are about people as consumers and some of which are about people as business people. And we use data science to bring those all together to get kind of one version of the truth. So if you look me up on Identified, you'll see me as the chief strategy officer at Identified, who used to be the head of the private client group at Oppenheimer and at Merrill Lynch and Putnam and so on and so on. But you'll also see that my wife's name is Heather and that we have 2 kids in our 20s and that I enjoy fishing and the outdoors and wine and cars and gardening and charity and those kinds of things. So you can see me as a person in the context of my career and who I am, in my household. And so those 2 things are really important because they inform each other. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So the first part of what we do at Identified is we have this really amazing database of the U.S. And we have basically the adult population of the U.S. married with the U.S. labor force, and that together forms the basis of our technology. From there, though, we do some really interesting things. The first of which is because we know where everybody works, we're able to attach wealth triggers to events going on inside companies. So as a company goes public, or a private company receives some investment financing, or an executive gets a new grant of equity or sells shares, we can see that very clearly, and then we pass that back to our clients so that they can see where there's opportunities that resonate with the markets that they try to serve. The other really important thing that we do at Identified is leverage the database itself. And so in my example, where I work at Identified and used to be at Oppenheimer and Merrill Lynch and AXA and Putnam, all of those things, all of those footprints in the sand of my career also leave a trail of relationships. And so because we know where people work and where they used to work and the boards they serve on and where they went to school and even where they live, we can use data science to infer relationship pathways. So to understand, if I'm interested in a certain market segment and there's people that make up that market segment, what's my brightest path to connect with them? And so our technology helps a client really understand that pathway to a company, to people, to a group of people or individuals. And so that's probably the most important thing we do. We wouldn't have had the ability to do that until we did all the work before. So we had to build the database, we had to build the wealth triggers, we had to build all of those things to understand to then give our clients the ability to leverage the full value of their relationship capital. So that's what we do.
That's fantastic stuff. The one thing that seems to have been consistent in your experience in the industry is relationships. How can advisors build a relationship with their prospects and clients virtually, since many can't do it in person? And what does the new relationship process look like?
So it's really fascinating looking at this. And again, I've spent my whole career serving top advisors and understanding, what their process is around managing their client book and prospecting and all of those elements. And of course, over the past 2 years, with the pandemic and with the work from home and all of the changes that were obviously quite dramatic at the beginning, it's been really fascinating to see how the industry has evolved. And so I would say that, relationships are critically important. I mean, there's a few things that I always think about, like your network in many ways is your net worth. Your network drives the value that you bring to an organization or your ability to capitalize on opportunities. And so, that's still critically important, and having that. But everybody had to pivot. They had to think differently about their relationships and networks. And it's been fascinating, just as I've been speaking to our clients and prospects of late. I usually ask people, tell me a little bit about what the past 2 years has been like. And invariably, they start to talk about, a series of large clients that they brought in over the past 2 years whom they've never met. And so, I think in the old way of thinking about client cultivation, certainly referrals are critically important. But I think that everybody sort of felt like it was required that we had to actually sit down physically with people and break bread and do all those things that we all like to do as humans. But I think we learned over the past couple of years that a lot of that can be done remotely, and that leveraging technology like video conferencing and all of that can be equally as effective, and in fact creates tremendous operating leverage. And what I mean by that is, if you think a couple of years ago about speaking to an advisor about his or her practice, and she might have said, I serve the medical community, and specifically people who focus on radiology or whatever the specialty is, and I do that in this kind of a geography. Well, of course, today with modern technology as a leverage point, the geography is no longer a boundary. And so you can be the expert serving radiologists across the country or around the world because that's your area of expertise, and because you can communicate with people in this new way. You're able to be more relevant to that audience, much more broadly. So I think that's been a really big change. I think the other thing, though, is that, it's a whole new skill set. If we've been accustomed over our business life to, be engaging in person, it's actually really hard to learn how to be engaging over technology. And so I think a lot of folks, worked with that and learned how to set up their Zoom rooms or whatever it was, create the right lighting, create the right atmosphere, but then also learn how to kind of project themselves into that camera in a way that really helps show who you are as a person, as a professional, and to be engaging. So I think that's probably the biggest changes in the way that advisors are building relationships and using technology. I think in a lot of ways, even now, as sort of some of the pandemic restrictions are coming down, we're finding that the technology interface isn't going away. People like this. Yes, we like to be in person, and I had a great day the other day meeting with clients in person, and it was wonderful. But you can't beat the operating leverage you get out of being able to be, in Kansas at 10 and California at 11, and then back in Boston at 12. It's just fundamentally changed our ability to be more effective and efficient.
Discovery Data empowers you to trust your decisions and your data. As your strategic go-to-market partner, we improve the impact of your data-driven sales, marketing, and recruiting to increase win rates and accelerate growth. Visit us at discoverydata.com to learn more.
Why is knowing personal aspects about people beneficial to doing business? And how might it change the way they do business? And do they have to be careful with it?
Yeah, so that's a big part of what we do. And so when you collect all that information, the power of that is amazing when used properly. So let me give you an example. When you look at my profile again, you're going to see where I went to school. You're going to see some hobbies and interests and those kind of things. If I was working with a new advisor, that person might have that information in front of them, but it doesn't change the importance around discovery and having a dialogue and having communication. What having the data does, though, is it really does help you in this new modern world to build relationships. If we share an alma mater, and that, somewhere along the line, you can drop some breadcrumbs about University of New Hampshire, and that's going to resonate with me. So those kind of things are really important. Knowing the context of somebody, their sort of life stage that they're in. Do they have children or not? Are they married or not? Hobbies and interests. Those are all sort of common connecting points that help to build relationships. And so having that insight available to you is incredibly powerful and important. But I think a lot of the best clients are using that in a way where they're approaching a discussion with some knowledge in their hand, but then also using it to foster a meaningful dialogue. And in a way that's enabling the ability to form deeper relationships, connections, leveraging technology.
How has our society learned to harness the power of data?
It's a big question, Doug. So I mean, I think let me go way away from what I do in my little corner of the world, but just think about how harnessing the power of data helped basically expedite the process of developing the vaccines that sort of got us out of this pandemic mess. And the ability to leverage machine learning, artificial intelligence, and modern data techniques to look at massively wide data sets to then glean out patterns and commonalities that are far beyond what any one human being or group of human beings can do is literally a transformation moment in our society. Whether that's data that is coming from a jet engine that lands on every single flight in the world and then transmits that back so that people understand the performance of the engine, mechanics understand it, those kind of things, or whether it's understanding relationships or developing new drugs and all that. So I think data is incredibly powerful. Data has transformed the modern world and will continue to. And I think that was really the thing that brought me to this company in the first place was that power. I didn't say this before, but we had one of the last things that we did at Oppenheimer Funds after we knew that the leadership team, we were all moving on. We were orderly transferring the business over to Invesco. And one of the last things that we did was we had this really incredible offsite with the leadership team where we asked a question, which was an interesting one posed by our CEO, after I think 67 years of being an asset manager, where we built a great platform. We had a $250 billion of assets under management. And the question was, how different would this company be if the data that we happen to collect along the way in servicing clients and advisors and understanding companies to invest in and all that, how different would this place be if the data was actually more valuable than the assets that we manage? And that was a big question for us to ponder. And in fact, in many ways, really understanding the power of data that people have in their operating businesses and how to harness that and how to use it to better understand client needs and all that. It was a really interesting sort of final chapter at an amazing firm to contemplate that and to think how different, we'd allocate resources and those kinds of things if that in fact was the thing that we were in business for instead of managing money.
It seems like data science adds another dimension to relationships and provides additional insights to what you know and what you don't know.
Yeah, I would say that that is very true. I think that, again, the thing that's really important is how you leverage it. So, it's all fine and good to, for example, to look at a company and say, okay, I'm really interested in this company, Rivian. That's it's a electric truck company that went public last year, and it's among the whole cohort of the transformation to electric vehicles and all that. To be able to sort of look at that company and say, okay, well, on the one hand, you can look and see factually, like, who are the people that run that business, and who are the people that serve on the board, and who are the people that run HR, whatever your sort of entry point is to that firm. It's an entirely different thing, though, to look at Rivian and say, well, who are those people and how do I relate to them? So to look at a board member and say, oh, that's interesting. That person is actually connected to this person who's on my board because the two of them serve together on a third board. And that's a real life example that we looked at when I was checking out Rivian. So to be able to be relevant to that company, on the one hand, sort of knocking on doors, knowing people's names and addresses and that sort of thing is one thing. Coming in another way to say to this board member, hey, I'm getting a warm introduction from this person that you serve on another board with, entirely different story. And then also knowing a little bit about that person and, what their care-abouts are and, where they live and do they have children and those sort of things. That's all really important information to build relationships. So it adds a whole other dimension. If we're doing our job well, we're helping our clients essentially take the whole sort of cold calling and search work out of their prospecting process and make it really easy to almost approach every situation from the start of a warm referral, which we all know is really the best way to engage with somebody else.
Identified partnered with Discovery Data to produce their interests and lifestyle specialized data set. What are some of the uses you're seeing from clients on how and why they're accessing this type of data?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and we were thrilled to start working with Discovery Data around this project. So Discovery has incredible insight on financial advisors and their practice, and being able to really understand what the makeup of their business looks like in terms of advisory business versus transactional business, and sort of all the different things that make up the complexion of what they do. What we brought to the table with the interest and lifestyle data, though, was a little bit more information about who those advisors are as people. Are they married? Do they have kids? What are their hobbies and interests? Where do they go to school? Those kinds of things, which again can foster relationships. So as I talk to leaders in asset management, folks that lead sales organizations in wholesalers or consultants or however that particular firm chooses to call that their team that goes out and covers advisors, having that information is incredibly powerful. So again, I've been doing this for a long time. In my early days at Putnam, I could come into an office of a wirehouse, see the 2 or 3 people that I knew at that office, and then maybe get an introduction to a couple more people as I was doing walkarounds. And then at some point, maybe the branch manager might have said, okay, time for you to move on and let my people do their job. And so anyway, but that's how I used to do it. I used to just come in and sit down, and, you walk in someone's office and you see pictures of their family, and you see the degree on the wall and where they went to school, and you could easily make those connections. Well, over the past 2 years, there were no meetings in offices. People were not going to take live meetings. And while it was probably still fairly easy to see or communicate or engage with the advisors that you already knew, it was nearly impossible to get in touch with people that you didn't. And so technology, and specifically the interest and lifestyle data set from Discovery Data, has been really helpful for that. Because if I'm a wholesaler for an asset manager here in Connecticut, and I can look at my whole market and I can say, okay, well, let's start with who here went to University of New Hampshire. There's a subset of advisors that we share an alma mater. That's a discussion, and that's an entry point I can have with those people in my outreach. Who are the people that like hiking in the outdoors or gardening, or who are the people that give money to education, because that's really important to our family. Those kind of things, they're shared experiences that you can really leverage to meaningfully engage with somebody. And I think that is, it's sort of like the sales 3.0 way of thinking about this, is that with the power of insight, with the power of understanding, interest and lifestyle data, you're much better able to engage and target and build relationships where they didn't exist before, even without having to come walk in the office and knock on doors.
I imagine the feedback you're getting has been fantastic. What are clients saying about the product?
Yeah, so clients are really happy about both products. So our partnership with Discovery, we're hearing great insights from the folks that are using it. Again, I think it's helping with understanding. We have some of the clients are using that from the perspective of arming their sales organization with insights about the advisors that they're focused on. There are other firms that are using this information to better understand the makeup of a team, to understand where those commonalities are. I'm fairly certain that there's also some of the wealth management firms themselves are using it to think about where there are teams that they could possibly recruit into their organization, and understanding a bit more about sort of the hobbies and interests and lifestyles of the people that make up that team. So on the Discovery side, we're seeing great feedback from clients and how they're leveraging that. On the Identified side, we're having so much fun partnering with wealth teams, and I think they are getting so much benefit out of working with us. And the ability to just sit down with a team or with a firm or a group of advisors and say, tell me what's your unique story, and what is the market that you serve. And as they start talking, we're very easy with it. It's very easy in the Identified technology to basically build basically the prospect persona reflective of everything that they said. Industry, location, wealth level, whatever it is, and then to show them with very clear eyes. This is the universe you just described. Here's how many people you could potentially serve in that market. And oh, by the way, here are the ones that you have a connection pathway to, which is a really good place to start. So I think advisors are really inspired by this insight. I think that they're also finding the opportunity to engage with people precisely at the moment where they need their help the most. So if you're thinking about private companies, for example, working with people in a private firm, as they start demonstrating some success, as they start to raise some investment capital to fund that success, you're able to really deeply engage with people and help them understand the wealth event that's coming around the corner, and be there by their side as that happens. I mean, it's so incredibly powerful. And again, it's such an honor to work with these teams and get to know them, but it's also really amazing for the teams when they see the power of how to leverage it.
Ned, this has been fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Doug. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
For everybody at Discovery Data, the Data Possible podcast team, we thank you for joining us. Goodbye.
The Data Possible podcast is brought to you by Discovery Data. For more information about Discovery Data, please visit discoverydata.com.